It was summer of 2009. Me and my family had recently moved into a new house. I remember that at the time, I was really nervous because I was at a new house, at a new place for my first time. I wasn't someone who really had friends up until this point. It all changed just about that same month, where I became really close friends with my neighbors. It wasn't too long until we became much closer, and then we started playing a bunch of video games together. One of the first multiplayer games I ever played was a game called Super Smash Bros Melee. I remember I played it at my neighbor's house, and it was one of the first times I experienced a multiplayer game, next to Mario Kart on the Wii. On my first time playing, I didn't really understand what was going on. All I understood was that you had to move your character along a platform and hit the other characters. As a concept, it was really simple. I remember that I never really won frequently, but I had fun nonetheless. That fall, they acquired a copy of Super Smash Bros Brawl on the Wii. I hadn't played a lot of Super Smash Bros Melee, but I do remember that the time that I spent on it was really fun. We played Super Smash Bros Brawl, and the first thing I noticed was that the game had so many characters. And as a kid, seeing so many characters all at once in the same game, and being able to play as every single one of them, is such a magical experience. I ended up enjoying the game so much that I asked my parents to buy it for me for Christmas. On my birthday, I received a Wii, Mario Kart Wii, and a copy of Wii Sports Resort. I was really thankful, and I ended up spending the next week straight just playing the Wii. Looking back on it, it really was an unhealthy amount of time, but I was young, so I don't regret it. About a week after my birthday, I asked my dad if we could buy Super Smash Bros Brawl on the Wii. He said it would be an early Christmas present, so we ended up driving down to the local GameStop, we asked the employee for the game, and purchased it. I remember the drive home. It was the typical drive home after you got yourself a game from GameStop. I remember I would tear off the plastic, examine the game cover, the disc, the manual, and just sit there super excited on the drive home, really looking forward to playing the game once I got there. I remember getting home, opening the games case, taking the disc out and placing it into the Wii, getting greeted by this somewhat noisy but really charming game preview banner. I grabbed the Wii remote from off the table, I pointed at the TV and clicked start, unaware of the impact that this one piece of media would have on my life. Anytime that I wasn't playing with my friends in the neighborhood, I'd turn on my Wii and play some Super Smash Bros Brawl alone, fighting CPUs. It wasn't too long until I'd played every character on every stage, and really started to understand how the game worked. It didn't take long until I got better than some of my friends, and had my own favorite characters. One of my favorite things about this game is just how much variety and content that there was. Looking back on it, I remember I spent a lot of time on the custom stage creator in the game. I made silly stages or just stages that I thought were really cool at the time. I remember I would make these completely enclosed box stages with one hole on them and having multiple CPUs. Then you would just attack each other until you're bouncing off of every wall. And I just found it super funny to see how the characters bounce across the screen. I even remember playing the little trophy minigame, where you shoot coins at the trophies and the weird spaceships will shoot rockets at you. I ended up having so much fun even with the smaller things like that. I realized that I have a really weird relationship with collectibles in video games, and looking back on it, I realized that this game is the cause of it. Well, probably that and the fact that I played a bunch of collectathons, but anyway, one day when I was surfing through the menus, I found the Vault's trophy hoard. Seeing so many cool characters, items, objects from even more video games collected all into one place, each one having a fun little description for them. It was something that just really fascinated me, and to this day, it still does, seeing so many trophies. For a little while, I really wanted to collect as many of these trophies as possible. So I no longer played normal matches against CPUs, and instead I began doing classic mode with each character. I hadn't really played too much classic mode before, but I had a blast with it. It was so much more than your normal match against the CPU, because you have a minigame, special matches against the CPUs, and a boss. It was so much more interesting than playing normal matches exclusively for the few weeks that I did. During this time I went snooping further around menus and found the events mode, which I didn't enjoy as much as classic mode, but it was still something I put a lot of time into and completed. I ended up playing just about every option in the game. Custom rule sets with items, the trophy minigame, events, classic mode. I even played the tournament mode against CPU players. I looked at the Chronicles. I remember playing Masterpieces, which were just small demos of other games. It was so much fun. I played tournament mode a surprising amount alone, and looking back on it, it is a little sad, but I didn't really have a lot of friends to play with, and when I did hang out with the friends that I had, we didn't often play too many video games. I enjoyed each game mode a lot, but not nearly as much as Classic mode. Classic mode felt more like a journey, something with a story that you could put together in your head. For a while, when I wasn't playing Classic mode, you would probably find me playing online with my neighbors. Whether it was because it was late at night, one of us were grounded, or whatever the case would have been. No matter what, we would always play together as much as we could at any possible chance. I remember these matches very fondly, and what I'd give to have the chance to see some of them again. Throughout your time in battles, items can drop. I remember we would do Pokemon battles in person, and we would set the items to be Pokeballs only and play as Pokemon. We would just spawn a ton of Pokemon and fight amidst the chaos. In almost each game mode, there was a random chance that a CD would drop during the match. I remember that if one dropped, everyone would have stopped what they were doing and they'd try to collect it. Each CD had an unlockable song. And even as kids, we could all admit that the game's soundtrack was phenomenal, and there was always a desire to hear more of it. So the small breaks in battle to collect a CD that dropped was always something that was super nostalgic for me. I really don't know how else to describe the feeling to this day, but it's one that I'll always cherish. After we finished playing our matches together, I'd go back to Classic mode and replay the characters I had already done, or just play a new character that I hadn't done before. By completing a certain amount of matches, or by clearing Classic mode a certain amount of times, you can unlock new characters. I remember that every time you were about to unlock a new character, I was super excited because you were greeted by a challenger approaching screen. It had an ominous siren with the character's silhouette, and something about knowing that I'm about to unlock a new character was just so exciting. One of the greatest feelings in all of gaming is when the screen shows up. As a result, I spent so much time on Classic mode compared to my friends. When my friends asked why, I thought it was just a story mode of sorts that, after completing a certain amount of times, you could unlock characters. It made me realize that what I sought after was a universe where all of my favorite characters could be a part of one big story. I was a huge fan of platformers, so imagine a perfect world where a platformer with a story featuring all of the characters I've known in my entire life up to that point that I loved. It sounds like a dream. It was fall of 2010. I remember that one of my neighbors had come next door to my house to play a few matches before he went home to eat dinner. After a few matches, he asked me if I'd played the Subspace Emissary. At the time, those were some pretty big words, so I didn't really understand. So I remember saying that I didn't even know what it was. He explained it to me that it was just another mode, and it was something super cool. He mentioned to me that you could play multiplayer, so it was something that we could play instead of just normal matches. I saw him navigate the menu, and he went to an option that I'd always seen, but I never really went deep into its menu. He created a new save on the normal difficulty and started the game. I wasn't sure where my expectations were, but after the loading screen, I saw something that I had always dreamed of as a child. The cutscene showed these characters that I had spent the past year playing with, but they were interacting with each other. This was something that I never would have imagined. At the time, I never really had a grasp on copyright trademarks or anything, but I just assumed it was against the rules or something to have a story featuring all of these characters. The cutscene finished and we played a normal match together against the CPU Kirby. I was unsure just how long this mode was. I expected it to be as long as Classic mode, so I guess I was expecting just a few matches similar to this one with some story. I don't think I've ever been proven wrong any sooner. After the fight ended, another cutscene played, and it wasn't over. The story kept going on, and it just didn't stop. There was just something about this game mode. You had original levels with characters from so many franchises that you can run through, with both old and new original enemies that you can fight. It really was an experience that made Super Smash Bros Brawl a super unique game that stood out from any other that I had played, and still played to this day. There were so many levels and characters that worked well in these environments, and they were all really fun and all contributed to one huge plotline. Despite not a single word being said in the entire Subspace Emissary, it's still one of the greatest plots I've experienced in a game. You go level to level in this game and occasionally fight a huge boss, and it made for a really simple but refreshing gameplay loop. There are so many awesome parts of the story that I could honestly make a whole video talking about how great each moment is and just how nostalgic each moment is for me. But the Subspace Emissary is really long, and to talk about everything and say everything that I'd like to say would honestly just take forever. Now, skipping ahead a little, at some point deep into the story, all of the characters are united and they enter the subspace. However, after they enter, everyone is turned into trophies, and you have to play through a bunch of levels in subspace with the characters that are still alive, and these are memories I still have to this day. An unforgettable experience with the most awesome looking levels. I haven't seen more interesting designs in a Nintendo game for something like this, and it's really awesome to see. After a few more levels, everything really changes and you are introduced to the Great Maze. This is a large level combining elements from other stages with its own original areas, and it's about as open world as a 2D platformer in 2008 could get. I remember the rest spot in the Subspace Emissary. It was such a cool area. It shows the sky getting ripped like paper by subspace with the main theme of Super Smash Bros Brawl quietly playing in the background. It was so cool looking. You usually don't see Nintendo nowadays with designs this cool. Not that modern Nintendo designs are bad, but they just lack the charm that this game has. You have to defeat the characters throughout the Great Maze to get all of the characters ready for the final fight against Taboo, who is the final boss. This game mode had platforming, puzzles, fighting, an amazing story featuring characters from the franchises that I love. It was everything I could ever dream of. However, throughout all this time, there was one franchise that was just missing. During this time, I'd spent a lot of time playing Sonic Adventure. I was a huge Sonic the Hedgehog fan, and it was easily my most favorite character and franchise of all time. At this point, I knew he had some inclusion in Super Smash Bros Brawl because of the back of the game's physical copy. I never saw him in game though. Something happened and my data for Super Smash Bros Brawl was reset earlier on in the year. I was also really stupid and reset my data like twice. Still no clue why I did that. I also spent more of my time during this year playing more Sonic the Hedgehog games. I was wondering where Sonic was in Super Smash Bros Brawl, and what part he had in the Subspace Emissary since each character had a pretty substantial role. I never really knew how to unlock him, and never really saw too much about him. Throughout my time playing Subspace Emissary, I eventually forgot about it. At a crucial moment in the story, where hope seemed lost for the entire cast of Super Smash Bros Brawl, they were about to be defeated again. At the most critical time, there he was. The character I almost ended up forgetting about in this game, from one of the franchises that I had loved the most. Sonic had showed up, and words can't even begin to describe how I reacted to this cutscene. He was there, one of my most favorite characters in video games, and there he was, in one of my favorite games of all times, at one of the coolest experiences to have in gaming history. The Subspace Emissary, for me it was a dream. There's no amount of words that I can say that can properly convey my emotions throughout my time playing this, but it was an experience that I couldn't ever forget. I don't think I've ever had a more enjoyable time playing through a video game than playing the Subspace Emissary, and even replaying it today, I still think it's super good. After I unlocked Sonic in a stage, I had noticed that some of the music that played on a stage was really good. I hadn't really considered my taste in music at the time, but I really enjoyed what was being played there. I began to look at the My Music section of the game as a result. I listened to each song in the game, and the collection of video game music was something that I never really realized and took for granted. There was so much music in the game. I think looking into this game's soundtrack and the sources for each song is what led to my addiction to video game music even today. There was something about how the music was directed in this game that made the experience all the more better for me. Nowadays, I can't really listen to a song from Super Smash Bros Brawl and not get nostalgic over it just because of how distinctive it all was. You have normal stage music from the original games, remixes of some themes exclusive to Smash Bros, and then all of the original songs. All of the original songs in this game, they're all extremely good. Notably the music for the Final Destination stage, Battlefield stage, and all of the Subspace Emissary music. It's also masterfully put together that it's hard to not appreciate just how great it is. Each of the songs during the Subspace Emissary complements the story, location, and characters so well, and it makes the cooler moments even more cool. There's not enough words to describe just how fantastic every piece of the Subspace Emissary is. After I unlocked every character in the Subspace Emissary, I ended up unlocking All-Star Mode. I didn't really know what it was, but it was something new for me to try. The goal of All-Star Mode was to defeat every character in the game, your percentage in stock stayed, so it was a challenge. I remember the first time I played it and I completed the first fight and I was taken to a place in between the matches. It's known as the rest area. When I first came to this place, I was blown away. I remember the music complemented this area so well, and each time I found myself in between matches, I would just sit at the rest area for a minute and listen to the music and just take in the pretty environment. I never really thought that music like this would have such an effect on me, but it did. One day I was listening to the songs that played on the Green Hill Zone stage, and I heard a song called Live and Learn by Crush 40. I looked at the source and it was Sonic Adventure 2. I didn't even know that they had made a sequel to the original Sonic Adventure, so that same day I ended up asking my parents if we could buy it, and they allowed me to purchase it a little later, which made me a fan of the Sonic franchise even more than what I already was. I had a blast playing through Sonic Adventure 2 and found myself wondering why there weren't any other Sonic characters in Super Smash Bros. After all, there were tons of Mario characters. My mind still didn't really understand the exact reasoning at the time, but it was some food for thought. A little while passed, and the next thing I knew, it was late summer of 2012. I had recently been exposed to the internet and YouTube. Admittedly, I was raised a good bit by the internet, but it also helped me learn about a lot of things and how they work, albeit sometimes the hard way. Having had been a fan of Super Smash Bros Brawl, I frequently watched videos on it. I remember going down a rabbit hole seeing a bunch of Super Smash Bros Brawl mods thinking that they were real and how to unlock them. At the time, I didn't really understand that it was modded until a little bit later, but I remember falling for the old how to unlock Shadow the Hedgehog in Super Smash Bros Brawl videos, where they had absurd requirements like winning 1,000 matches of Sonic. In my time trying that, I never really got far, but I also ended up realizing that it just wasn't real. I remember that at some point in my video rabbit hole that I found the competitive scene for Super Smash Bros Brawl and the tournaments that were hosted for the game. I remember that whenever I would get home from school, I would check YouTube and watch a few high-level competitive matches, absolutely stunned at how well the players played. I eventually found myself watching tournament videos of other Smash games like Super Smash Bros Melee. I had played Smash Bros Melee passively on the side as I played Super Smash Bros Brawl, but just never as much. I didn't really think that Melee was so quick of a game until I saw the competitive scene for it, and I thought it was super cool seeing so many moves happen so quickly. It really made it feel like a fight from some anime or something. As a result, I spent a lot more of my time just watching and consuming YouTube media related to the games that I enjoyed, whereas anyone else my age would have probably just been watching cartoons or TV. Unfortunately, I soon ended up slowly growing out of Super Smash Bros in general for a little while, where I would barely keep tabs on the modding scene and competitive scenes. To this day, I still watch a ton of competitive Smash Bros, especially Super Smash Bros Melee tournaments. Probably more than I ever did when I was young, because it's still super fascinating and awesome to watch. It was only natural that my time playing Super Smash Bros Brawl over time slowed down. Unfortunately, I ended up moving away from that old neighborhood with the friends I grew up with in fall of 2012. As a result, Super Smash Bros Brawl has a lot of feelings related to that time, where I thought I wouldn't ever see those friends again. It was a bit of a sad time for me because I had just lost my closest friends as well as other things. I never really had any in-person friends that were so close to me ever again to this day. I slowed down playing the game on my own for a while, though I would still play online multiplayer with my friends from that old neighborhood while we talked on our parents' cell phones to each other until the batteries died. I really don't know how to describe it, but it being one of the first games I really dedicated myself to playing, to this day it still has a magical feeling. All of the memories and experiences that I grew up with came alongside this game. It's where I put a lot of my time into during those times. I can't help but want to play the Subspace Emissary every year just to feel those moments and memories again. The game to this day is timeless. Even though its gameplay may not be better than most of the other installments in the series, it still has the features and one of the greatest gameplay options a video game has ever seen, that being the Subspace Emissary. Some time passed, and it was now 2013. I remember going onto YouTube one afternoon while I was playing Roblox, and I saw a certain video on my front page. Most of my YouTube front page during this time was mods for Wii games, soundtracks for some video games, and competitive Super Smash Bros matches or highlights. The video that stood out to me was a video titled Super Smash Bros for 3DS and Wii U, first trailer. I didn't keep up with new video games during this point in time, so I didn't really know what a 3DS or Wii U were. It wasn't long before I figured out that they were entirely new consoles. The video showcased the villager from Animal Crossing receiving a letter. The letter contained the Super Smash Bros logo. I didn't really understand what this meant at the time, but I knew that it was official and that this was something really important. Suddenly it started showing a bunch of franchises, and it reminded me of the Super Smash Bros Brawl E3 trailer that I had watched in the extras menu in the game. At that moment, it clicked with me. This was a new Super Smash Bros game. The moment that I realized that, it started showing some gameplay with graphics that looked absolutely stunning. This trailer announced that a new Super Smash Bros game was in development for the Wii U and 3DS. I was extremely excited and asked my parents to buy me a 3DS for Christmas, which they did despite a bunch of financial complications at the time. Whenever I saw videos about the new games, I would watch every single one of them. I was super excited, and I remember that I would talk with my old neighbor on our parents' phones just about how excited we were. We would then play Super Smash Bros Brawl online for the rest of the day. Fast forward to September of 2014. We both bought the 3DS version of the new game and played it while on the phone with each other. Something I noticed pretty quickly was that it was nothing like Super Smash Bros Brawl. It didn't have the sheer amounts of features and game modes that Super Smash Bros Brawl did. It didn't have the same amounts of unlockables or collectibles. It just didn't feel the same. Maybe it was that I was growing up and I just didn't feel the same way towards it like I did with Brawl. It wasn't longer than just a few days where I unlocked all the unlockable playable characters in the game and did just about everything there was to do outside of matches with friends. Surprisingly, we didn't really do a lot of online multiplayer in the 3DS version. Unfortunately though, I couldn't play Super Smash Bros Brawl with my friends again. We lived somewhat far away from each other at this point, and in May of 2014, Nintendo had shut down their servers on the Wii. I couldn't play online with my friends anymore on the game that I had loved the most. I would occasionally go back and play against CPUs alone, and it wasn't too long before I ended up asking my parents for a Wii U for Christmas, which they bought me, and alongside it was Super Smash Bros for the Wii U. This game had so much more than the 3DS version that I had been playing for the past few months before December, though it still didn't have as many unlockables as Smash Bros Brawl. I played much more online multiplayer with my friends for the next few years on this game, and before I realized it, I was good at the game and I had done everything there was to do. During this time, I still noticed that it wasn't the same as Brawl, but I didn't really think too much into it. I spent most of my time during this point just playing online matches with friends. Fast forward to 2018, where Nintendo Direct announced that they would be making another Super Smash Bros game on their new console. I didn't even feel the same excitement I felt towards Super Smash Bros for the Wii U, and I already knew the game wouldn't be as good as Super Smash Bros Brawl was. While Super Smash Bros Ultimate news kept coming out and it was always super exciting, there were always lingering thoughts. Maybe even wishful thinking of maybe getting to experience more of what Super Smash Bros Brawl had to offer, but just in a new game. I didn't find the game as enjoyable. I didn't like the World of Light as much as Subspace Emissary. It just wasn't the same. I think that maybe Super Smash Bros Brawl was too good to me when I was young. I sought more of those experiences and memories associated with Super Smash Bros Brawl in the newer titles. But those were experiences that I couldn't get back. Memories that could only be left in the past. Before I knew it, I realized that I had truly grown up. I yearned for the experiences that I once felt with this beloved franchise again, but I knew that I'd never be able to. The time I spent playing Super Smash Bros Brawl in that old neighborhood with my friends was easily the greatest time of my life. Looking back on it now, there really was no time where I was as happy as I was then. As a result, I think I associate a lot of these memories and feelings with Super Smash Bros Brawl. Super Smash Bros Brawl was a magical game for me, and no other game in this franchise could ever get close to the experiences that I had with Brawl. Which isn't to say these games weren't good, because they were still good games. They just didn't have the same magic I felt when I was young. The music, the gameplay, the characters, graphics, design, game modes, every single thing about this game is unforgettable and means so much to me. I will never forget the memories and experiences that I had with Super Smash Bros Brawl. They are some of the memories I hold closest and most dear to me that I shared with some of my friends that mean the most to me. My experience with Super Smash Bros Brawl is a story that means a lot to me. Thank you for watching what is basically my tribute to one of my most favorite games. I poured a bit of my heart and soul out for this one, so I'd really appreciate it if you supported this video by liking, subscribing, sharing, and leaving a comment to let me know what you think of it. Check out my Twitch as well. I occasionally stream there. I'll probably make more videos like this in the future, so please keep watching.